Okay, let's take a look here. Let's see if I can explain what I was getting at in asking you, where do you think you can tweak your workout on that volcano course to prevent some zone 3? Now, your rides didn't have too much zone 3 in them. They just had some zone 3. Remember, we're looking for an 80% minimum on the targeted zone. So you were well within that still. But here's I'm going to show you something here. This is your ride from last week on the volcano circuit, and I have highlighted one section here. This is equivalent to one lap of the volcano essentially, and this is the elevation profile of the course. So you can see there's a little climb, a little climb downhill through the top and then back up the hill. So we're going to look at this. So the spots where I was suggesting you might be able to change some things in your ride, let me just zoom this out a bit. Where I'm seeing a repeated pattern here, where you could prevent some of that time spent in zone 3. So what we've got here, we're only looking at this section that's gray. We've got speed, which I'm not worried about. We've got your power line, your heart rate is nice and flat, and we've got cadence. But everywhere in here, sorry, I'm a little bit shaky today. Everywhere in here, you see a power jump. If you look at where this line here is, you'll see you have a power jump. It also corresponds with a climb on the course there. See that black line right there? That's the climb on the course. So everywhere there's little jab up on your elevation, you also have a jab up in your power. So let's take a look at this. All right, so as we move along this way, you'll see there's a little hill coming up, and so this power increases, and it increases up to, well, you're 150 watts right there, 170 watts. And then as the hill disappears, you go back down to your stable power. And the same thing, you go uphill again, and you get a little increase in power. Oh, my coffee is making me shake. But it's repeated all the way along this lap. So you get to hear that there's a little hill. You can see it jumps up. We come along to this hill right here. See how there's an incline there? You have a spike in power, which brings your heart rate up a little bit. So everywhere there's a spike in power, it pops you up. So here we go, look at this. You got a spike in power. Your cadence here is 90 RPM at the point of this black line. As your power goes up, your cadence drops to 86, but you're pushing watts, which as you can see right here, cadence goes down, power is up. The only thing that can happen when your power goes above where you should be, this line, is your body responds with an increase in heart rate. So that increase in heart rate right here, you can see that's a spike. If we look at this end, you're 160 BPM, okay? Let me flip this to a different screen here. These are your heart rate zones. 160 beats per minute is in tempo. So what we need to do is make sure that you're keeping your heart rate in this zone, under 155. Let's go back to that ride. So here's your heart rate spike, and it's caused by an increase of power. So what you need to do is, as you're hitting this elevation on the course, this is on Zwift, outside, anywhere, it doesn't matter. Your power is spiking up, causes an increase in heart rate, your cadence is dropping. So, see you're at the little hill here? That's where it's happening. So as you approach that hill and you start to see that that hill is coming, well, you know you can't produce more power or it's going to cause your heart rate to rise. So your only option is to either reduce your cadence, but if your workout says, hey, here's your cadence right here, 83, your workout says stay above 90. So you just need to downshift a little bit earlier, and paying attention to the road gradient in Zwift or outside. Of course, you don't have a number to say what the road gradient is outside, but you just know because you're riding it. You have to respond with an earlier shift to keep that cadence line as flat as possible, which will keep this spike of power out. So this would be more flat and would not result in an increase in heart rate. And you see how that increase follows the power everywhere. Increase, 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 increase. So all of these little spikes over the course of your workout add up. We gave you 12 minutes of zone 3, right? So we're looking for a minimum of 80% in the target. So that's what's happening. So all you got to do, and you can see here, I'll zoom this out. Remember, that's just one lap. So we've got all of these laps you produced. Let's zoom this back out. So all of these little spikes of power have the same resulting increase in heart rate. And if you zoom this in, you can see all your little drops in cadence. So it's just adding up over time, creating that spike. So it's a repeated behavior over and over again that can just be modified by shifting a little bit earlier and keeping your power in line. So I'm going to show you one more thing about that might help you put that piece together. Let's look at your last FTP test. Here's your zones. So this isn't just useful for telling you your heart rate zones. Look at your heart rate is 127 to 154. But this is saying that if all things are aligning properly, your power numbers are 84 to 113 watts. So if you start putting out more than 113 watts, unless your zones aren't aligned, you would expect that your heart rate is also going to increase into zone 3. This is the wattage power for zone 3. If you're putting out this kind of power, you're going to expect that heart rate. So it corresponds back and forth, right? So 113 watts was the top of zone 3. So if we go back to your ride here, look at that section. Here's your watts right here down at the bottom. Look at 106 watts. This level on your chart, you're also at 90 RPM. See, 106, all of these areas here, nice and stable, put you in zone 2. But when you increase this power, here, let's look at the number over here, 137. Well, your power is well over your zone 2 area. So we're kind of throwing another number in here where if you're watching your power number, that's why your heart rate is rising. You're producing too much power to possibly stay in zone 2. So hopefully now by understanding how these all correlate and seeing this drop here, you can prevent this spike in power by shifting earlier or one more gear when you're hitting that climb to keep this power line as flat, take all those spikes out as possible. And that's how you can ride this course staying in zone 2. That applies to outdoors or indoors. Any questions? Put them in the chat.